want to give you one sort of banner value. You've sort of heard our objective, but there was, again, in terms of the practical side, here's kind of a banner value that has been true from day one. We'll give you some more details. And so let me just put this on the screen. We decided early on to emphasize honor over obedience. To emphasize honor over obedience. Let me just read a couple things in my notes about this. In an environment of honor, there is virtually no need for rules. In an environment or a culture of honor, there's virtually no need for rules. Where there is no honor, you have to cover every eventuality. How thick is your policy and your manual, your manual at work, your job for your company? It's like page after page, and sometimes you look at the legal system. Wherever there's a breakdown of honor, you have to have rules for every single eventuality. But in a culture or a relationship of honor, there's virtually no need for rules. And the third thing is this. If you don't have a culture of honor in your home, it is exhausting. It becomes a game of catch me if you can. And you didn't say never, you said last night, and you didn't say, and I didn't say, and finally you're having to write out contracts with your kids so that we cover every is and are and present tense. It's just exhausting. So in a culture or a family where it's all about we have rules and you obey the rules, and when you disobey the rules, this is what happens, you have to cover every eventuality. But if you learn how, and we're gonna tell you what we've learned about this, to create an environment that is really real simple. We honor one another. Everybody knows what that means, and everybody knows and can learn what that means in every single circumstance without there having to be a family policy manual to explain what to do in every single circumstance. So we're going to talk about this, but emphasize is not that we, put up with disobedience. That wasn't it, as we just talked about. But the emphasis was honor, not obedience. In other words, and we're going to give you some specifics, we didn't have rules that just hung out there like, well, these are just rules. Well, the reason you're in trouble is you broke the rule. That's a culture of obedience. The reason you're in trouble is because you dishonored your mom, you dishonored your father, you dishonored your brother, you dishonored our neighbor. So it's a seemingly subtle difference, but it's a big difference with huge ramifications. And you can talk about our two rules that flowed from this.
Right. From emphasize honor over obedience, there were two rules that just kind of naturally flowed from that. And those two rules in our house were honor your mother, which I loved that one. Andy came up with that one. I was like, yeah.
Actually, Moses did, but I stole that.
You chopped off part of it. Yeah. So anyway, honor your mother and thou shalt not lie. And we'll talk about both of them. But first of all, honor your mother. One of the ways that manifested itself in our family, Andy required our boys to stand at the dinner table. Some of you have heard us talk about this before. To stand at the dinner table until both Allie and I are seated. And this was just a rule. And it was something that they did consistently. And as I look back at that, I feel like that one thing communicated several huge things to them and taught them several huge things. One was honoring women. And for guys, honoring women flows down to so many areas of their lives. It's not just about honoring their mom, it's really about honoring women. And standing at that dinner table was just a great exercise that exercised that honor muscle toward women for our boys. The second thing that it accomplished that I think is enormous is our daughter saw our boys and her dad stand at the dinner table until she was seated. And in my mind, in my heart and mind, I love the fact that sets her up to recognize a man in her future that knows how to honor her and to very quickly recognize dishonor from a potential person that she might date or someday marry. And I just think that's a huge, big deal.
Yeah.
It sets the bar really, really high for her.
And this was this was the biggest offense in our family from day one. You can dishonor me, but if you dishonor your mom, you're not even gonna want me to come home. And it was a big deal. And I over-disciplined. And I told our kids throughout it, every single stage, I always explained to our kids, I am not going to be fair, I'm not going to be even. I am going to overreact. And here's why. Because when you're an adult, you can commit a 5-minute crime and spend 15 years in prison. And that's not even, and that's not fair, but that's how the world works. So I'm going to overreact. I'm just giving you a heads up. And if you dishonor your mom, I'm gonna overreact. And we're gonna talk about some specifics in just a minute. But I'm telling you, men, if you teach your children to honor their mother, they will honor you, because they will honor you for requiring them to honor their mother. If you do not honor their mother by teaching them to honor their mother, they will not honor you. This is a big deal. Remember I said in a culture of honor, you don't have to have very many rules. You almost only need this one in a family. But we did have a second one, and it was thou shalt not lie.
Thou shalt not lie.
That's also from Moses.
Yeah, that one is.
The two commandments, yeah.
Thou shalt not lie is such a big deal. And the reason is lying breaks relationships. And especially when you're in those coaching years where your kids are starting to have some independence, if you can't trust that what they tell you is true, it makes parenting so complicated. Now, our kids lied. There were plenty of times that they lied, and we made a big deal out of it. But learning early that this is one of the most important things in our family, I think it was something that really helped them take it very, very seriously. And there wasn't a lot of it as we got into those training and coaching years.
If you ask our kids today, what's the worst thing you can do? They will smile and say, tell a lie. Because they grew up hearing the worst thing you can ever do is tell a lie. And this goes back to what we're saying about honor versus obedience. And the reason it's the worst thing you can ever do is because it breaks a relationship. And the worst thing you can do is break a relationship, because this is about honor, not obedience. We don't not lie because it's in the 10 Commandments, and we don't not lie because it's in the Bible. We don't lie because lying breaks a relationship. And we are a family where we honor and where we value honor. So that was the big deal.
Let me just say one more thing about that. One of the things that Andy would say to our kids, and I picked up on this really quick because it was so effective. When we were about to ask them a question that we thought they may lie about this, Andy would say, Andrew, Garrett, whoever, Andrew, I'm going to ask you a question and you're going to be tempted to lie.
I still do that.
We do that.
I say, Sandra, no, I don't say that.
But I'm telling you, it makes them stop and think, okay, it just creates a pause. And when you look at them in the eye and you say, I'm going to ask you a question, you are really going to be tempted to lie, but I really want you to tell me the truth. They are 80% more likely, I think, to spit out the truth.
Because most of the time we lie when we're caught off guard. And then we've already lied, then we're stuck.
So it's a brilliant question.
So we're driving one day, our kids are little Andrew and Garrett in the back seat. And what's the worst thing you can do? Tell a lie. What's the worst thing you can do is tell a lie. That was just kind of reverberated through our family. And so Andrew's back there and he says, Dad, I think I know something worse than telling a lie. He's been thinking about it. Surely there's something worse than telling a lie, because that's our big thing. The worst thing you do is tell. Dad, I think there's something worse than telling a lie. I said, what? He said, worshiping the devil. I said, okay, you're probably right. So we had 3 rules. Honor your mother, thou shalt not lie, and thou shalt not worship the devil. Okay, so let's go back to this big idea. We're gonna emphasize honor. We're gonna emphasize honor over obedience. So here's some specific ways, here's some specific things to hang on that big idea. First off, tie rules to relationships, not behaviors. You want to tie your rules. When you have rules in your home, you want to tie those rules to relationships. In other words, how does this rule impact a relationship? Not simply behaviors. These aren't just, ideas that are hanging out there disconnected to anything. Because every rule, and this is so important, every rule is connected to honoring someone. Every single rule in your family should be directly connected to how it is an expression of honor to somebody. In other words, when the kids say, well, why? The answer to the why question when it comes to rules should be a person. Not just a thing, not just the Bible tells us and God tells us and it's just not good and you just shouldn't do that and you ought not. You have a better answer than that. The why behind the what is always a person. Why? Because the rules are about honoring people, not simply keeping rules. And at the macro level, and this is such a big deal, and especially if you're new to Christianity or maybe you're not a Christian, this goes to the heart of the New Testament ethic. When you open the New Testament and you look at what the New Testament says about what we should and shouldn't do, 100% of the time, it is tied to relationships. Everything Paul says, everything Jesus says, it's all tied to how our behavior impacts other people. So it's not these rules that are just disconnected, again, sort of dangling in the sky. They're all connected to people. And as parents, one of the best things we can do is connect personal behavior to how it impacts positively or negatively other people. And again, this goes back to honor.